Okay, Rohith, we're live. Thanks for joining me on the podcast this morning. I'll give you the floor. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? Just a little background for my audience.
Yeah.
Set the stage for
And
a conversation.
my name is Rohith. I'm super active in the marketing kind of world. I'm a Twitter brand strategist, so we help people build brands on Twitter and book a lot of appointments for their agencies, businesses, SaaSes, or whatever the goal might be.
And what's kind of your origin story? How did you get involved in Twitter specifically? Maybe you can kind of like go back to the beginning where you kind of discovered this and said, "Hey, I'm going to really try and make a run at this and make this my expertise."
Yeah, so I actually worked the 9 to 5 as well. I was a data scientist. I worked there for a little over 3 years. And while I was there, I had a great time at my job. I got along well with my coworkers. It was a really fun time for me. I felt like I was learning a lot of cool skills, but I felt like there was a part of me that felt like I was capped and that I couldn't really go past where I was at. And there's a part in the soul where you want more. You want to see how high can you go? How far can you push yourself and what can you achieve if you give yourself the opportunity to answer those questions. And so I decided a lot of guys online say like you got to like quit your job and like really go for the business full time. I wasn't really prepared to do that. I wanted to make sure that I had my bases covered so that I could afford to pay like bills and expenses and not completely be left hanging. And I also didn't want to really dip into savings and take this big risk on entrepreneurship because I heard so many businesses fail out there and I didn't want to be one of them. And so what I did was I started a business on the side of my job. And so I was actually working my 9 to 5. And when I wasn't working the 9 to 5, I'd be working on the business. And for me, that meant building my Twitter brand, my online brand presence, meant reaching out to prospects, getting on sales calls and trying to close those guys. And it also meant fulfilling on the back end, making sure that those clients got exceptional results so that they would go tell all of their friends about the amazing results they got. I was pretty like unsure throughout like my overall process just because I didn't know if this thing would ever take off. Like it every time people always say like business, it's kind of one of those things where it's like if it works out great, but it fails so often that like I was just very skeptical. I'm a pretty skeptical kind of guy. I don't like taking insane levels of risk or anything. And so, especially at that time, I felt like there was so much I didn't know. There were so many uncharted waters that I was kind of just walking into. And so I was pretty unsure it would work out, but I realized it was kind of business became more of an identity thing. When your identity evolves, then you kind of evolve to do the tasks required in order to make it work. And it's not that the actions you are doing that makes the business work. It's you that makes the business work. It's your soul being invested in what you are doing that makes the business work. And so that's really what I tried to do when I was approaching it. And I really just tried to build some momentum, celebrate the small victories, and then really scale. It took me a month and a half to land my first client. But after I did that, things just really started flowing. I really used that to build momentum. And a lot of the actions you do on like week one will start showing off after like month one. So business, the gratification is a bit delayed, but when it comes in, you can start really collecting some wins under your belt. You get a few case studies. Those case studies make it way easier to sell future clients and future prospects. And that's where you can really achieve great results for your business. And so for me, that was really kind of the path I went for, especially when I was starting out. Once the business started taking off, then that's a whole other set of like stories and trials and tribulations and things I went through on that end. But at the very beginning, that was really what it was about. It was just about getting that initial set of actions going so that I could build the momentum needed in order to see some results and give myself hope. Because I feel like at the beginning of everyone's entrepreneurial journey, it's really about how can you give yourself hope so that you can keep going? Because there's so much uncertainty and there's so many things that you don't know that the only thing that will get you through it is just hope and massive amounts of self belief. And so that was really my journey there.
No, that definitely helps set the stage. And I'm curious too, how did you decide Twitter, right? When you basically working as data scientist, you said, I want to start something, right? There were probably hundreds of different ways you could have gone, but you decided Twitter. Was there a specific inspiration, or did you just take it upon yourself to say, hey, this is a platform where I can build an audience and therefore I'm going to go with that? Like, I'm just curious why Twitter, right? There's so many options people could choose.
Yeah, so for me, I was just so uncertain at the beginning on whether this whole thing would work. I didn't want to spend hours and hours editing video content trying to figure out if this thing would take off because video, as you probably know yourself, it's time consuming. You got to edit, you got to find people to be on the video with you if you're doing a podcast. You got to create the videos, you got to set it up, script write. Like there's a lot that goes into it. And it does pay off a lot harder, but it also takes a bit longer to pay off. And so for me, I was pretty unsure. So I was more like attracted to the written based platforms. I've always enjoyed writing growing up. Like that's a skill. I've always been pretty good at it. And so that's something I wanted to explore with the online platforms. And so for me, it was really between Twitter and LinkedIn. The reason why I didn't go for LinkedIn was because I was kind of worried that my employer would catch me like posting on LinkedIn or working on LinkedIn or whatever, and I could potentially lose my job over it. And so, what I found, and a lot of other people in kind of the Twitter space have experienced something similar. Twitter's really nice because your employer is very, very unlikely to check Twitter. So you can build on Twitter. And then once you decide to really leave your job and go full time into the content creation game, then it's pretty easy to grow on LinkedIn. You can kind of just repurpose content, change a few things up to match voice and stuff like that. The follower growth is a lot slower on Twitter compared to LinkedIn. On Twitter, it takes a little bit of time to grow. On LinkedIn, you can kind of just pop up anyways. So all of these different things that really factored into my decision to do Twitter first. There's no right or wrong answer. Both work. LinkedIn's really nice because there's a big B2B audience there. So if you don't have a job that you're afraid of losing, LinkedIn could be a really good avenue for you to get a lot of really top tier clients on. Now, here's a big difference when it comes to client acquisition with the two. LinkedIn is kind of limited to around 250 or so connections per month or per week or something like that. I don't remember the number off the top of my head. Twitter, you have like 500 a day. So you can hit a lot of people on Twitter too. And so if you're looking to really get started with your business, you don't have the money to like pump into paid advertising, or you don't have to wait that long time for organic to pay off. That's an option where Twitter can really serve you and give you that initial capital you need to really take off.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I kind of struggle with the same thing about like being like publicly like, hey, I have this thing I'm doing on the side. So I think a lot of people struggle with that. So I like how you were really deliberate and you said, I'm going to do this for these reasons. And it seems to have paid off. Can we go a little more into that first month, I think you said, or month and a half to getting your first client, like what your strategies were? Because I imagine you're brand new starting out on Twitter. You don't have a following, but you're going to start posting, you're going to start DMing people, but you don't really have the credibility behind you. So what did you do to land that first client? Maybe a little more specifically, the
Yeah.
strategies that you employed.
So two things. One was with regards to credibility, a key way to fast track your credibility is to align yourself with people who are already very well respected. And so what I did was I joined a few mastermind groups and mentorships, which really kind of boosted my credibility there. The other way to build credibility is to work for free. So if you work for free, people don't really need to trust your credibility that much because you're working for free. As long as you're not going into their internal systems and stuff, which the line of work that I'm in, we don't really do that. And so for that, really, it was just a combination of like me doing all those mastermind stuff. But if you work for free, you get like that credibility, you get those initial like trophies from clients, and then you can use those trophies to sign future clients. And initially, it is a lot tougher. Like the first few deals I got, and I'll dive into that in a bit, were a lot worse than the deals I'm getting now, just because people see that you're fresh, they see that you're new, and they don't trust you completely. They feel that they're risking something by working with you. And so the deals are going to be a little bit more unfavorable. that's just kind of how that works. But essentially, the way I did it, I kind of established credibility by joining a bunch of mastermind groups. You have a lot of like key figures that people respect, saying a lot of positive things about you. That's a really good way to build credibility. Then what I did was I just I posted content consistently because that's important. You want to post content talking about the thing that you do, and then I just reached out to people. There's really people often bash on cold DMing and like cold emailing and stuff like that, but the truth is the big companies, they're all doing it. And the only ones that aren't doing it are the ones that have established brands that are so big that they've essentially become utilities that people go to. But outside of that, if you're starting out, like cold is how you're going to get clients. Like you reach out. My first two clients I landed were both off of cold DMs that I sent on Twitter. So that's kind of how that worked. I pinged him. One of them was like a cold inbound kind of hybrid where he had been following my content for a bit, and then so it was more of a warmish DM where I reached out to him. That's how you do it when you're starting out. Now I'll have people come to me inbound, and you have referrals and stuff like that, and that's how you get really really big on the organic side. There's also the paid traffic and all that stuff. If you're starting out, the best way to do it is just cold DM, cold email. You do those two, and you're posting content consistently. You're going to land clients. Now, it is a lot of work. It is a lot of reaching out to people. It is a lot of hopping on sales calls and making mistakes. But you're going to figure it out, because it doesn't take rocket science to figure out that the best way to talk to people is to actually care about helping them and to have a really really strong product on the back end. So if you can deliver value to people, people are going to see through that, and they're going to see that. They're going to give you a chance. And it might not be for the amount you want, but early on, you kind of just have to take it on the chin and take what you can get and really see how you can push that to use those opportunities to land even bigger opportunities down the line.
Can you maybe articulate what your initial offer was? I was checking out your website and your current offer. Has it changed a lot, or did you start out a little differently?
So initially, I only offered followers. I didn't offer the qualified appointments. Basically said we will get you 10,000 followers. Um, and to actually dive deeper, the very first guy that I signed was essentially like he wasn't even sure I could deliver on the thing. I was barely sure I could deliver on the thing. I was kind of just going off of something that a mentor of mine told me was possible. The mentor told me that he would coach me through the process, but I was still really, really scared. What this guy essentially said was we will split like the payment that you get over five or so payments instead of the normal like half before, half after kind of payment structure. And so like that, I took an inferior deal to get the opportunity to kind of work with this guy's business and really, really blow it up. But initially it was just that 10,000 follower thing. I'm a huge advocate for like, especially initially, my offer is very unique because it's based on followers and not really revenue generated, but or at least it was. But what I would recommend to a lot of people is to either have some kind of performance based incentive in your offer or have some kind of refund. Like that's very likely to help you land a lot of clients early on because people don't trust you and they really need to feel that the decision is reversible or they're just not going to take that chance to work with you. And so what you want to do is basically say, I'm not going to charge you like a flat fee. I'm going to charge you per appointment booked or per follower milestone hit, which was essentially what I did with my first client. We basically broke it up into 5 follower milestones, the 10,000 followers, and the guy would pay me every 2,000 followers and he could opt out at any time. So that was kind of a way that I was able to get him over the finish line. I now have an amazing case study with him. He recommends me to all his other clients. And so that's something that when you're starting out, it's a very, very powerful way to build a reputation and like get some wins under your belt.
And so that seems, and maybe I don't understand Twitter that well, but
Sure.
getting somebody 10,000 followers, I mean, that seems like that could take a good 3 months, 6 months. Am I accurate? Or you say, no, I could turn around quicker than that?
Yeah, like three months is usually the period we promised to people. Getting it faster than that, it's doable. It's tough. it really just depends on kind of the strategy. What I tell people is, like, if you're trying to rush your follower growth, it's usually a social proof play where you're not trying to become some kind of like overnight influencer, because that takes a lot longer to build that up. You're trying to establish credibility for your business so that you can sell some kind of product or service or something along those lines. There is a lot of the camp on Twitter where they say you want to grow without like anything at all, like pure organic, like you just kind of ride this wave up. And that's a totally fine way to do it as well. There are lots of people that have been very successful doing that. You comment on a ton of posts, and it takes a bit longer. It'll take that 6 to 9 months to do it. What we do, we use a lot of like retweets. We use a little bit of Twitter ads, not so much anymore, but you did use a little bit of that, especially for a lot of the lead generation. And we also do have that commenting kind of wheel like in place. Essentially, what that does, it helps people, basically people who are just starting out, they can associate with accounts that are much bigger than them. And when that happens, they're able to pick up a lot of followers a lot faster and really get credibility. Once you have the credibility, it's a lot easier to grow. But really, it really just depends on what your goals are. I would even go so far as to say, like, if your goal is to be like a super hardcore influencer that's like super famous, don't even like waste your time on Twitter. Like, post on Twitter, sure, but you can become like a YouTuber, like go on Instagram. You're gonna get way more likes on Instagram. You're gonna get way more views on YouTube long term. And on YouTube, you can even get like the AdSense monetized and stuff. Twitter can work, but I find Twitter is a very community-based platform anyways. So it really just kind of depends on what your goals are. Now, if you're trying to grow your business, you're trying to get leads, that's a totally different story. Twitter is amazing for that. You can see a really fast ROI on that compared to a YouTube, which takes a lot longer to build. It really just depends on what your goals are. And so really, like, that's kind of how we're able to get results much faster, just getting big networks of people to endorse your tweets, endorse your threads, kind of increase the visibility on them so that more people can actually digest them. Because at the end of the day, any marketing ever in the history of mankind has come down to one thing or two things. It's come down to a quality message, and it's come down to lots and lots of traffic. So if you have a quality message and you have lots of traffic on that message, then whatever entity or whatever group is pushing out that message, that group is going to get a lot more potential people who are interested in whatever they are offering, whether it be products, services, like a purpose, whatever it is. That's just how marketing has always worked throughout the test of time.
And so when you say associate with larger accounts, are you like strategically paying somebody to retweet one of your clients' tweets to get more exposure? Is that kind of what you mean? Or is it just organically developing those relationships because you have those relationships? How does that piece work?
Yeah, so it's a combination of the two. I have a lot of relationships with a lot of the bigger accounts just because a lot of big accounts kind of become friends. So everyone's kind of in the circle. But the other part of that is, yeah, you pay accounts to retweet your clients' tweets. And that's where actually a lot of the expenses of the service go to. It's getting those guys on board so that they can like take time out of their day and their timeline and their schedule and add visibility to whatever post that you're trying to get promoted. It's very similar to influencer marketing on other platforms. You get other influencers to endorse a message, and when everyone's endorsing a message, it's way more likely to get traction. And that's really a big part of this game.
And are you able to share like how much that costs, like what a typical retweet from and maybe you can like clarify, maybe not the specific person, but like how many followers they have and what the reach would be? I mean, is that a substantial expense or not so much? I mean, I guess I understand like for the person that is just maybe retweeting it, there's not much effort on their end, right? But they do have to kind of fit with your brand, right? And understand what they're promoting. But I'm just curious if you are able to share.
Yeah, of course. So the answer is it really varies. Different influencers charge different amounts. It's a very kind of carte blanche, a la carte kind of thing. But you can look at like a range. Like some will charge as low as like maybe like $15 per retweet. Others will charge $400 a retweet. Like you can get I don't know if you know like Dan Coe is, but like some of those bigger guys,
Hmm.
if you want Dan Coe to retweet you, that's like a $400 per retweet kind of expense. So it really just depends on the size of the creator. Sorry about that. Size of the
No, you're good.
creator, how much like visibility they have, how much status, what their engagement looks like. Some creators don't retweet, some do. It really just depends on kind of the creator itself. But I would say on average, if you're paying an average size creator like monthly, you're looking at around a $300 to a $500 per month kind of expense.
And then I'm curious too. Maybe we could just kind of pivot a bit, like your journey growing followers, because obviously now you have 220,000 followers. Kind of like what that was like. Maybe you can break it up into time periods. I know you said you were able to land your first client pretty quickly, but what about like a follower count and building a following on Twitter? I mean, is that kind of a slog? Is that a multi-year thing? How does it work? Like, does it kind of go exponential at a certain point? I mean, I'm just curious too. And as someone who is trying to kind of build a following, I get it on a different platform, but what that was like and kind of how you dealt with that. And did you have a goal of saying, hey, I need to get to X followers, or was it more focused on just getting clients?
Yeah. So, I mean, my initial goal when I was first starting out in the game was I wanted like 100 million followers. Like I wanted to just like go as high as possible. You realize once you get above a certain size that like the follower count doesn't really matter as much, and so that's where it starts becoming a how can I round myself out in other areas and stuff. If I wanted to keep growing followers like incredibly fast, like I could. I know exactly how to do it. I just choose not to. But essentially the way I did grow followers initially it was masterminds getting associated with a lot of the key guys. Then it was getting retweets on my own account. Got a lot of retweets, got some guys to shout me out. Like that really helps. Then I also ran ads on my account as well. So I ran those and got a lot of followers through that. That's probably how I got the vast majority of my followers. Um,
Hmm.
I I don't recommend that anymore. In fact, going back, I probably wouldn't have done it. It was just something that I kind of did. What I would say the best strategy if you're trying to grow like pretty fast, like definitely using like influencer marketing, like that helps. Getting personal brands to like kind of getting into a group with personal brands and everyone kind of helping each other and giving each other the boost they need. That's the best way to do it. You can also go the commenting route where you go heavy on the commenting and stuff like that. That's good as well. That's like the pure organic way of growing. It takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of energy. And to be like fully transparent, I think it's kind of a thing where people's time would be better served doing other things. Like you can build a following, like a big following on Twitter, and that's great. But if you are going to spend that type of time and energy, you might as well build a huge following on like YouTube or something like that because the payoff's just going to be so much bigger. There are more active users. There's about 250 million active users on Twitter. There's about like 3 billion even on Facebook. And I don't know the exact number on YouTube, but I'm sure it's in the billions. And so you just have more people you can tap into. You can become more of a mainstream kind of celebrity type thing, which if that's your goal. And you can really kind of tap into that. The main two strategies on Twitter that are the best way to grow that I've found that I personally haven't used because I've used more ads on my account, but that I've used for clients is really just the heavy organic, like you do a lot of commenting and post quality content, you post quality tweets and threads, and then the other one is you get influencers to kind of give you a bit like a little bit of a boost through retweets, shout outs, and you have them kind of grow that way. The thing you got to be careful of with that second one is that your engagement, you got to be monitoring your engagement to make sure that you're still connecting with other creators so that your engagement's pretty good. Joining a lot of like mastermind groups and groups behind the scenes, like growth groups, will also help you out because these guys are all hungry to grow. And so everyone kind of trades with each other and helps each other out to make sure that everyone grows. Now, in terms of what content should work, like is working right now, here's the content that's working right now. Threads that multimedia style threads that talk about big celebrity style people. Basically you use that in like the hook and then you basically run down like in your thread and you have multimedia. So essentially you have like short clips of like that big person, that big celebrity, talking about the topic that you say you're talking about and in the hook, and then basically running that down, getting a bunch of influencers on that, and then pushing that up. That's what's working right now in this day and age. Will it be working 6 months from now? I don't know. Trends change constantly. The Twitter algorithm is changing constantly, but that's the strategy right now that is working very, very well.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And you brought this up a couple times about the masterminds. Can you kind of go into specifically what you found when you started, what that costs from your perspective? Like, are you putting up thousands of dollars to get in front of these people, and maybe like if you have any recommendations of current masterminds that you know that are out there that you'd recommend people check out?
Yeah. Um, so I put up thousands of dollars, but like you don't have to do that. So I did because I was just like, I wanted to take this very seriously, invest in myself, I was trying to get a bunch of skills and all that stuff. And really, I went for like the people at like the very, very top of the food chain. And so I was just spending a lot to get access to them and stuff like that. You don't need to do that. You can join masterminds for as small as like $200 a month. You can even get it for like, I know there's some that charge like $20 a month, and you can get, now you get what you pay for. Like it's not going to be like a super high quality one, but the barrier to entry is a lot lower, and so you can get people in, like you can get into masterminds that are like $20 a month if you don't have the budget for it. um One really good one I know, a good friend of mine, Talon Simmons, has like this thing called the School of Thought. It's like it's more of like a group mentorship program where he teaches people. But there are a lot of hungry creators in that program that are very, very good. A former mentor of mine, and like very, very good friend now, Dakota Robertson, also has one called Growth Ghost, which is another growth kind of community where you have hundreds of people that are hungry to grow their accounts. Um, and you get access to all of them. They're all like super open to meeting new people. They're all posting, trying out new content ideas that are likely to gain traction and testing out all these different things. And you can get wonderful access to people. These two alone, you'll have more people in those than you could possibly ever deal with. Lots of kind of legitimate people in there, like personal brands, like the types of people you want to be associating with. Um, that's that's what I would recommend on that end. There's some smaller ones as well. There's one that's like $20 a month. I think it's like Hustlers Network or something like that. That one you'll get a lot of accounts that are more anonymous, which they're still great people, but you don't get that like actual person to person connection like you would if someone is more like a mainstream personal brand account. Um, but yeah, those are just some. There, I could be here all sitting here all day listing out like different masterminds and
Yeah.
different programs. But really, like the big thing with Twitter is the big thing with content creation in general is you like you want to make sure that you're putting the people first. Like the people, your audience, the people you want to serve. You want to make sure you're putting them first, and you want to make sure that your message is there, like is geared towards lifting them up and like empowering them. Like a common rule of thumb I like to tell people is like, if someone consumes your content for like 6 months, their life should improve. And so if you kind of follow that philosophy, I think there's a really good chance that you make it as a great creator, and there's a great chance that people will respond to you. And even if you don't blow up to like like an extreme degree, which I think anyone can blow up, really just is a matter of putting in the work. But even if you don't, you'll have like a few thousand people that are about you, and really that's all you need. Like the human mind can only track like 150 people anyway. So if you have 1,000 people that are about you, if you have like 1,000 quality email subscribers, that's a $500,000 a year business. All you need is 1,000, man. So like you don't need to like go super crazy with trying to get like 1 million followers or whatever. Like even personally, like there's not much of like a boost at this point getting more followers than what you already have. But like what the where the real ROI in is where the real ROI is having a huge impact on the people that trust you with their attention. Because they are paying you something. They're just not paying you money. They're not paying you time, but they're paying you their attention and I guess a little bit of time. And so what you do with that and how you use that to have an impact on their life, that's what's going to really dictate how far you can go in this game.
Yeah, no, I think really good points. Can we kind of tie that into your current strategy, right? Because I was checking out your Twitter feed and it seems like currently you're posting about once a day. And I don't know if this is fair, but it's kind of more of like an Alex Hormozy style of tweeting where you put out some sort of advice, or it seems like it's kind of your stream of consciousness about what you've learned and what people should learn about life and business. I mean, is that just kind of your goal? It's just to keep posting consistently. That's what you want to post about. That's what you think people will find value from. Is that kind of where you are currently?
Yeah, and I would definitely say like the way I tweet, like my style of tweeting is definitely not one that I would recommend to like a person starting out. Um, what I'm essentially doing, I'm just trying to maintain the account and like kind of keep it going and uplift people with kind of those streams of consciousness, like those like essential thoughts. I'm not going too deep just because I've been super busy, like behind the scenes, like with the business side of things. But I think, like, yeah, if you post like streams of consciousness thoughts, like those are always helpful. Um, a key part is really it's about kind of connecting your past with people's present. That's what's really going to get people most compelled about your journey and your brand. And so when you're posting, when you're talking to people, you're connecting, you're trying to connect with them. Like that's the whole point of posting. But in order for them to also trust you, it can't be you and your present that's connecting with them. It can, but if you're trying to really like lead them in a certain direction, it's usually some kind of transformation that you've made, like your past connecting with their present. So for example, if you look at like a fitness like brand, like a fitness guy, and you see him tweeting stuff and yeah, he's tweeting advice and stuff like that. But the big thing that draws people to his brand is not the fact that he's super jacked. It's the fact that he was once really skinny or he was once really fat and he became jacked. And the people consuming that content, yeah, there are some guys who are connecting to the fact that he's really jacked. But a lot of the people who are consuming that content are connecting to that skinny kid or that really fat kid that was bullied in the lunchroom. Like that's who people are connecting to. And they're trusting this guy's advice because he's leading them to where he's currently at. And that's the key with a lot of these brands is you want to kind of guide people along these journeys by having kind of this delayed sense of connection where like your past connects to their present. That's what's going to get a lot of the people from the masses to really take you seriously.
And is that something you employ in your business? Like once, I think maybe through your funnel, through your tweets, right? Like, hey, I started at nothing, just like you. I've helped all these other people along the way, and here's the case studies, and look at me now. And then that kind of, as you mentioned, I would imagine it organically kind of builds on itself. And then maybe if you could speak to like, do you have more leads than you know what to do with, or is it still kind of a struggle getting leads and sales and clients? Like, how does that tie in with what specifically you're selling?
Yeah, sure. So I don't do a lot of that anymore just because right now, like a lot of my focus is kind of learning other like marketing channels and acquisition channels and stuff like that. But I very well like I could, and that's the best way to do it for sure. Now I mostly just tweet streams of consciousness just because that's just more fun for me. In terms of like more leads than you know do with, yeah, like you get a lot of lead flow, like especially if you have like a lot of followers and a lot of people, you'll just have people reach out to you out of the blue, just asking about your service, like asking to do business with you, and you basically can sign them pretty fast because they're pretty bought in, they've consumed your content, and they see the case studies and the testimonials and they're pretty ready to buy. Now, what I do tell everyone is no matter how big you get, outbound is always going to be a source of business for you. So it like definitely will have a lot to gain by doing outreach, by doing outbound, and by continuing to fill that up. And that's where I would say a majority of your clients will come from. The bigger you get, the more likely you are to get inbound. And especially like if I were to run like an auto, like basically like a giveaway type thing or auto DM, like I could harvest like loads of clients like tomorrow. I would say like even like YouTube is nice because it's like Twitter on steroids for a lot of this stuff. Like you can really kind of land a lot of people and really get a lot of like clients just on autopilot because YouTube, a lot of those videos are evergreen. But Twitter can still pack a punch and you can save a lot of time, which is where I think the big part of Twitter is you can get a good amount of the results you can get from YouTube while saving so much time on like editing and producing and scripting on the back end. Because at the end of the day, it's like a tweet you can take, like you can write one of those in like 30 seconds.
Yeah, 100%. And then I'm just curious. So you're doing stream of consciousness stuff. I was checking out your Twitter feed. Most of your tweets are getting like 3,000 views. What does that like typically equate to from a follower sense today? Or are you even tracking it? Are you even tracking like, oh, today I got 50 followers, 100 followers, or is that just not even top of mind anymore?
No, I don't really think about it anymore, to be honest. Like, I like when I was starting out and growing, I was looking at the follower number like every day. I was kind of tracking it, trying to like actively grow it and stuff like that. I personally, I don't get like as much of a thrill from the follower stuff as much. I know I at any point in time I can snap my fingers and I'm at like I think 220K right now. I can make that like 400K. It's pretty simple. I know the formulas. I know how to make it happen. I like focusing on other areas like growing the business, growing the revenue, impacting other people, like like helping the people that I work with, helping my clients. Like to me, that's where I think a lot of my growth is. I've always been someone that's been driven by learning and growth, not really by a lot of like the materialistic stuff. And so that's kind of where a lot of my attention is now. I'm fascinated by how can I learn more? How can I do more? And how can I have a bigger and bigger impact? And at this point, followers, it's kind of like when a lot of those billionaires say like, oh, like money, it just kind of like keep score. It doesn't really have the dopamine that you get from growing followers kind of goes away too to an extent. Now there are some people who play the game who really feed off of it, and that's awesome. That's just not for me.
No, no, I think it makes sense. And super interesting to hear, right? To speak with somebody that has a huge following. And I think I get it, right? Like it's kind of like the law of diminishing marginal utility. Like as you get more and more, you're like, okay, I've been here before. I've gotten 1,000 followers in a day before. It's not that special. So I think that's super interesting. But maybe we could close out. You've kind of touched on it a bit, like where your focus is now. What do you see next for your business, right? I would assume it's just you running the show, right? And maybe you could clarify too. Your business is called Inspiring Ghosts, like ghost writing services, helping people grow on Twitter. What's next? What are you exploring from a new marketing channel, or like what's next for the rest of 2024 maybe?
Yeah. So yeah, really like my business is essentially like we help people build brands on Twitter. We help them get lead gen and kind of lead flow for their business. Like that's really kind of the key crux of how we help people. Um, where I see things going next for me, it's just learning all the like other marketing channels. I've been studying a lot of like cold email, paid traffic. I've been studying a bunch of other like marketing style business models and stuff like that. And to me, that's far more interesting because it's just always there's so much stuff that you can learn from that and so many cool things you can do. And that's really like what I'm about is just learning more and like figuring out how I can do more and more things. And so my next step is probably going to be something aligned with that at pretty much every point of my life until I like realize or until at some point I'm just like, you know what, this is good for now. Like I can like chill out. But really right now my big goal is just want to learn as much as possible. I want to learn how to do as many things as possible and help people in as many ways as possible, and especially within the scope of marketing. And that's what I plan on doing.
No, I think that's a great mission. And so maybe just last question here, because you've done a lot, right? I think when we started our conversation, you were thinking about working a full-time job, hey, this might fail. I'm gonna like dip my toe in, and now like to see where you've come. Or I don't know if you ever look back on your journey, but it's probably pretty incredible to think how far you've come. So, any advice, or what's your best advice for somebody that's just starting out like you were just a little while ago?
Yeah. I'm say probably experiment. Like, be willing to experiment, be willing to fail. There's a lot of failure in this game. And I'd say actually even better one is learn to master the self. If you can master yourself, what you can accomplish is truly unlimited. You can do anything, you can accomplish anything. But the first thing that you have to figure out is how can you manage your own thoughts? How can you look at the world in a way that brings out the best in you? And if you can figure that out, everything else becomes really easy.
No, awesome advice. I think that's a great way to end. So, real quick, where can people find you if they want to learn more?
Yeah, Twitter. If you see my ads on Facebook,
Yeah,
like definitely
obviously.
there. Um, but yeah, I mean Twitter. Like, feel free to DM me. I'm pretty open to like responding to people in the DMs. Um, yeah, or if you find my posts helpful, feel free to like interact with me there. Try to interact with as many people as possible on there as well. So yeah, really just Twitter.
Awesome. Yeah. No, I think just considering the conversation, that makes sense, right? That's pretty pretty obvious. So I'll link your Twitter in the description. And hey, I know you're busy. I appreciate you taking the time to do this. I definitely gleaned a lot from the conversation, so I hope others will as
Of course,
well.
man. My pleasure.
Yep. Thanks.